Guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to part 1 of me explaining perspective for drawing and painting to you. So, here's what I've heard, and even pros have said this. Some of them famous YouTubers, mind you. So, here's what they said. I'm not going to spend years learning perspective. Years, right? So instead, I'll just use a tool to help me along the way. If you're one of those people thinking perspective is too hard for me to learn, it's not worth it, it takes too freaking long, stay tuned because I have good news. Step 1, have a sip of water. Just kidding. So, why do people think perspective is so complicated? The reason why they think this is very obvious and very simple. Are you ready? It's because they don't understand it. Or they only understand parts of it and they fail to make the connection between the loose ends of those parts. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is super easy. It's like a breeze and you can do this like in half an hour you will have understood this. No, it's not easy, but it's also not as complicated as some people want you to believe. And I'm not even sure why they want you to believe this. Maybe it's just because they don't understand this and it's a coping mechanism or something like that. But anyways, now, what is actually wrong with using those tools, or as I call them, crutches? Actually, there's only one thing, but that thing is a huge deal, and it is this: they will hold you back. That's right, they will absolutely hold you back. Keep you from understanding, keep you from learning, but this is just something that like you're lacking in the future, right? So they're also impairing your process right now. For example, now let's say you start drawing and you need a grid and you put a grid on the canvas, and usually people select this first grid by the means of the first major object they are planning to put on the canvas. So now if that is a road coming from the middle, it will be a 1 point, vanishing point, 1 point perspective. And if it's something else, maybe a building that facing a 45-ish degree angle, so they will put 2 points and then adjust the grid accordingly. So what happens now is at 1 point, you might be pretty satisfied, but you need now another object that is facing a different direction, right? Objects facing different direction theoretically will demand a different grid. So now what? You need a second grid. And maybe after that a third grid, because you might want a third object that is even facing a different direction, right? And so on and so forth. So now you might think to yourself, what's wrong with that? Let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen anywhere, ever, somebody that uses more than one grid on a canvas? That's right, neither have I. And 22 semesters teaching, I have never seen it. And the reason why I've never seen it is that people don't do it. Despite me just describing to you that theoretically for different objects facing different directions, maybe tilted towards different angles, you would actually need different grids. Somehow people that don't understand perspective will never utilize more than one grid. And the reason for that, main reason I figured over time, is that it's because the first grid they ever put will hold them hostage forever. for the entirety of the painting. Because if you don't understand perspective, and now there's your grid all set up, and you drew a lots of lines according to this grid, you get the subconscious feeling that if you deviate now from this grid, what you do is wrong, which of course couldn't be further from the truth. But how would you know if you don't understand perspective, right? So you see kind of the dilemma there. If you don't understand it, you do not even know sometimes how to use those tools efficiently, right? So that is what happens. So guys, we're on a canvas, and the first thing I want to clear up, is some of the misconceptions surrounding perspective. So here's one. People will tell you, you can even read this in some books or instructions. Well, today we paint an image in a one-point perspective. So what they will do is they quickly set up the horizon, find that middle, and then start doing a one-point perspective, because in their head, and maybe in your head too, it's like this is something that you need to decide when you start painting the image, right? Wrong. You don't have to decide this. What they don't understand is, and what I want you to understand is, you do never set up an image for a single perspective. This is the wrong way of thinking. It's the wrong hierarchy in your head of things to decide. What happens is this. You want to draw a road, and that road vanishes towards the middle. Maybe not even exactly, what are the odds, right? And then you have maybe a sidewalk, and then you have some, as you do, right, some markings on the road. Right, so and then maybe you have some buildings, something else. So here's the thing. The reason why you select a one-point perspective is not that the image, that you decide that the image functions in a one-point perspective. The reason is because the road, the object you want to draw, you want it to vanish towards the middle. You want it to have a certain orientation, because what is the road really? The road is just like a slice. If you would turn that upwards, it would just be like this, right? This is what the road looks like. And then you lay it down and it vanishes towards the horizon. Therefore, will look like this. Very, very simple thing. So what specifies the perspective being one point is not the image. There's no decision that you need to make for the entire image. It is the object that you want to draw on the canvas that will specify this, right? Because imagine now you think, oh yeah, there's the one, I have set up my image for a one-point perspective. What you will do subconsciously is every single object, maybe a house, now it will be that same orientation, and you will quickly feel like it is not possible to do anything else, right? So what now if I tell you put down a box and turn it 45 degrees? So then you're confused because you think, wait a minute, my image is in a 1-point perspective. How does this work? Because realistically, what you would have to do is, now there's a box. If there was a box that is just the same orientation as the road, that is fairly simple, right? You just draw it like you do the road, and then this would be your box on the road. What's in the box, right? So would look like this. Now if you want to turn it 45 degrees, obviously this one vanishing point is not enough. You need two, because what happens is that now your box will look somewhat like this, right? Because you turned it 45 degrees. Therefore now has two new vanishing points. Let's draw these in red. So yeah, it will have two new vanishing points. I'm not being accurate here, but you get the idea, right? So now, where's your God? Image is in 1-point perspective? Obviously not. So here's the deal. The object specifies perspective. Let me repeat that. The object specifies what perspective you utilize. If I turn this box some more, those points will also move. So therefore, the only thing that specifies where are my vanishing points are the objects that are on the canvas. So if there is a second road, and this road also is turning 45 degrees and it's just entering here, guess what? It will just be like this. It will just enter the scene. Yeah, maybe this is not the best approximation, but yeah, you know what I mean. So now what happens is that this road uses a different angle. Most likely something like 45 degrees, but we cannot know for sure. And the reason for that is because we did not construct it mathematically, right? It's just an estimation. So same way that this is an estimation. So the same way, of course, you don't just construct an image in a 2-point perspective or a 3-point perspective, because let's say, and I'm going to drive this point home, give me a second. You have our two roads intersecting here, right? Well, with maybe even the sidewalk. That's great. Now I'm saying to you, okay, give me a new box, but this box now, instead of just being the 45-degree angle box, how about this? How about the box is actually tilted upwards, right? See how that feels? That box now, that will be the shadow of that box. Box is lifted up the ground. And what do we get? 2 points somewhere else. Middle. And then now, oh, this opens up. Look at that. Because it's coming towards us. So now what happens is down here, there's a new vanishing point. And that is a 3rd point. So we now have a 3-point perspective only for this box, not for this road, not for that road, not for the building, not for all the other boxes, just for this box. And you can tilt and rotate this box any way you want if you understand that the rest of the world doesn't need to change for that to happen, right? So that's maybe the first most important point, is that again, the objects specify what perspective they need applied to them in order for them to face and be turned towards a certain direction. So yeah, I think that's easy enough to understand, but you might be thinking now, wait a minute, that is way too fast for me. I don't even know how to do this at all. So okay, I was making a point there, but let's go back to the empty canvas. Because the first thing, before you even understand why there is a horizon, is, no, I should say, you need to understand the horizon, right? So what is the horizon? Horizon is what is level to the earth. So basically, you have your earth and you're somewhere here and you're very small, and as we know, there are some people who believe the earth is flat because they're idiots, and the reason why you might believe that is because the earth is so big that you can't even see that far, and unless you're on the ocean you cannot really see the curvature of the earth, right? So the way you perceive the earth is as flat ground, because on average, let's be honest, if you're taking a walk outside and there's some slopes, some hills, you how far do you see? 10 miles, 20 miles, maybe, depending on the weather condition, depending on the environment. If you're on a little mountain, little 300, 400, 500 feet above sea level, maybe you see 30 miles. And then the atmosphere gets pretty thick and you get the ballooning effect, like the atmospheric perspective setting in, and you don't really see anything beyond that point. So point being, you don't really see that far because you're not looking through the telescope. And also, as I said, inside the atmosphere, it's really hard to see that far because there are obstacles in the way. So this is flat ground. This is you with your little camera. So now what happens is, the horizon is the thing that if you hold the camera level, very far away, will be in the middle. So you might think to yourself, wait a minute, but there is a difference. I'm standing on the ground and I'm almost 2 meters high from the ground, if you are. And you're right. So that is an approximation, right? Because let's say you can really have a view of like 20-30 miles. What that just means is that this whole thing is kind of not very accurate. What it really looks like is much more like this. this is you, and then this is the camera you're holding. You see where I'm getting at? It's such, your height, your eye height is such a negligible height that really it's the same as the horizon was in the middle. Even if you are on a mountain with your camera, on a long enough scale, because you're really even much smaller than that, right? On a big enough scale, this is your 20 miles away, that is still almost eye level, right? So it's still a horizon that you see that is pretty much in the middle, even though you're up on that mountain, like I just showcased, maybe some 4 to 100 meters, right? So unless you're on Mount Everest, that doesn't really matter. Of course, if you're on a plane, your eye level, you only see clouds. You're not seeing the horizon in the middle of the lens, obviously. But for everything on Earth, this is how it works. All right, so now we got that out of the way. The horizon usually is the middle if you just look through the lens of your camera. In the middle you see a horizon. If you hold it level, that means horizontal. Horizontal, the word itself comes from the horizon, right? So horizontal means parallel to flat ground, even ground. Now, what we do is, in this part 1, we only talk about flat ground and 90-degree angles, because that is the easiest to understand, and that is the first thing that you absolutely need to wrap your head around if you ever want to understand more about perspective. So, as I showcased before, from here you can have fancy lines emerging. All go to the same point. Now what does that mean? It means only one thing, and that is that they are parallel. So number 1 and number 2 and number 3 are parallel, which is why that is how you draw the road in the first place, because the two sides of the road are parallel sides, right? And then this could be the second lane that goes the other way, right? So, and you can continue like that. Now, what is crucial to understand is that now about constructing the 90-degree angles. Because the thing is, why do you need perspective at all? Have you ever asked yourself why you need a perspective at all? Like, fundamentally. You need it because you want to draw an object that you understand its angles and how it is constructed. If you only want to draw arbitrary shapes, you do not need a perspective grid. You don't need to understand perspective. The moment that you want to draw something that you understand is where you need it. Example. Let's draw a box on that road again. So, usually people draw boxes either like this or like this. You will not find much in between with people. They will either draw one or the other. Now, see how I just eyeballed one of these boxes and then constructed the other one. So what's the deal between these two boxes? And now we're getting to something that is understandable. So the first side of these boxes everybody can understand. It's a 90-degree angle. Now, the other thing is that there is a perpendicular side to that box. That is this one, and this one, and that one. And we know from our understanding, this our goal is, if we draw a box with 90-degree angles, we want this angle to be 90 degrees, and we want this angle to be 90 degrees, and this angle. Now the thing is this angle looks like 90 degrees. This does not, and this does not, and this doesn't either. So how do we know that they are 90 degrees? We know that because that is a fundamental rule of perspective, is that if there is a frame that is not cropped, the middle of the horizon, what is parallel to that horizon, by definition, is perpendicular to all of the lines that go towards the middle of that horizon. So there is your first basic, most important rule. No matter where you put the box, if that box's sides are parallel to the horizon, that means the orthogonal perpendicular side, it will always end up on the horizon. Always. So you constructed a second box with the knowledge that these two boxes are parallel. This side and this side of that same box is parallel, and also they are parallel to this line and to that line. So now back to the other box. What's with this box? So basically, this box is just plain wrong, right? Because see how those sides, they end up on different points on the horizon, because I drew it poorly. Also, it feels like the box is tilted like towards the camera, which is another indicator, but of course that is just a feeling. We cannot rely on our gut feelings. We need to apply some geometrics here. So how do we draw that box that is turned 45 degrees? It's actually not that hard to do. What do we know about the one box? If we know that inside one box you can put another box, right? So what you could do is you could find the middle of that box, and what that gives you is new points. And so you can intersect the box. You can do this in different ways. And then if you connect all these lines, guess what you get? You can already see it, right? You get basically a 45-degree angles on this box, and you cut out of the first box another box which is then orientated differently. So the way that works is, let me do this very simple. You want to put 1 point and see how you can just via these points create another box. Now, what do we know about the box? Is it a box with 90-degree angles? Because that was the goal, remember? The first box was a box like this. It had 90-degree angles. Now the second box, does it have 90-degree angles? Yes, it does. Is it the same size? No, it's not the same size. It would be much harder to make it exactly the same size with the twisting and the new orientation of it, right? So, but we have a box that is basically turned a 45-degree angles. Now, how do I know that? The reason why I know that is if you have these parallel lines, maybe let's clean up this box again. You have those parallel lines. To the horizon. If you turn this box, of course these lines will no longer be parallel to the horizon. They will start bending more and more towards a certain direction. And if you turn them equally, like this side will eventually go to here, and then that other side it will, so that other side that now ends on the horizon, it will move out, because right, it will incrementally turn towards this side as you turn the box. And at one moment, this, the one side and the second side, they will be equally far, turned equally towards the middle of the horizon, towards the middle vanishing point. And if they are turned equally, which we know because this distance is the same distance, is a equals B situation, right? So if they are the same angle, starting from a 90-degree orientation, they have, by definition, they have to be 45 degrees. So this is the proof that they are 45 degrees. If they were uneven, let's say one point would be here and then the other point would be here, which you could draw a box like that, see? What that would mean, and you can all already feel this when I draw it, what that would mean is that it's not 45 degrees, it's much more turned towards one side than the other, right? So of course, box not being in the middle of the canvas exactly does not exactly help with that. So let's showcase this very, very easily without anything. You're just to go to the middle and do this super clean. Now we need to make sure that this is the same, and then this is the box. So it's really simple, and now you can see that these sides are the same, and then these sides are also the same length, and the reason for that is because they are in the middle of the canvas, right? Like so. Middle vanishing point, and now this vanishing point, it exists. However, the box does not utilize it. because this is turned, this has been turned 45 degrees. You turn it another 45 degrees, you get the flat box again, right? That's how this works. You can even see this here. The diagonal of this is perpendicular to the middle. So by definition, a 90 degree and then turning it 45 degrees, it needs to be the case that both these vanishing points, let's call them V2 and V3, are the same distance from the middle for them to make for a 45 degree angle on a rectangular shape, because this is only true if the box actually has 90 degree angles. So this is how basically the rectangular shape has the clearest, most easy to understand rule system to it, that if you can understand that, then you can do a lot already. So, is there more to understand? Yes. Because the deal that we did not cover is the depth of those shapes. And we will not cover this in part 1. This is much more complicated. But also, again, you can understand this. Just understand this first. Okay, so what you know now is how to create rectangular shapes in an orientation that faces towards the middle and in a 45 degree turn variation that faces towards 2 points that are equally outside of the middle of your canvas. So this is what you have learned. And then with that knowledge, you can estimate other shapes, right? You can, for example, make this shape, know what it is, a box with 90 degree angles, and then you can say, you know what, I want to cut this now, like so, and from this create a new shape. And then this is the pyramid space station, right? And then it has an antenna in the middle, and it has some satellite dishes, for example, right? So you always go from simple to complicated with this stuff, and then you can modify it more. You can cut away from the shape, and you can add another structure to the shape. And so on and so forth. And then you can say, okay, I need a road to cross here. And then you have a little tree. And you have a person. Now you get the picture, right? You add stuff and you subtract stuff. Now, what does this mean for an image, for an actual image? So let's do away with this. I drew something for you. You're welcome. Little slope with some trees, with a mountain in the back. You need some imagination to fill this. Not the best drawing, I know. Bear with me. You have your horizon, because doesn't matter what you draw, you always have a horizon. So now you have a problem here. Your problem is you have organic, natural shapes. And you have your horizon. And if you did not set your horizon, you either set it, I said earlier that if you hold the camera straight, it needs to be in the middle, but of course we're doing drawings, so we can just cut away from the canvas the same way that you could make a photograph and then just cut apart from the top or from the bottom or from the left or from the right. Now, I will not go into this too much right now because it gets more confusing if I talk about all these eventualities, right? So let's not do this. Let's don't crop this. Let's keep the horizon in the middle. Nice. If your drawing does not support this, which would be such a drawing, now this drawing says basically it is kind of impossible that the horizon is up here, because now the horizon is above that mountain and then there's nothing. And usually if you can see the horizon, there needs to be something, right? Or something should cover the horizon. Anyway, you twist it, you need something there. So a way to fix this is what I have done: just move the drawing into a position on the canvas where it would make sense with the horizon in the middle, right? So we're not going to get hung up on this horizon in the middle thing too much, but let's for now do this, okay? In part 2, I will explain you how you can modify this easily. So now we have the organic shapes. Well, we possibly want something now, because remember again, why do you need to have your perspective? Why do you need to think about your perspective? It's because you're about to draw something that needs the understanding of perspective. Because if I'm just keep drawing trees, I don't need a perspective setup at all, right? So let's say I want to draw a platform anywhere into the wilderness. People struggle with this, especially if they are very new to perspective. They're like, oh, how should I orientate it? And the first mistake they always make, and this is a mistake my students make, everybody makes this mistake, is they don't draw a horizon. Now, the horizon is the first thing hierarchically that you need to appear, right? If you have not the horizon not set, not decided where it is, then there is no way that you can draw a platform that is in fact a platform that is level to the ground with 90-degree angles. So just get that right. You don't start by drawing the platform, you start by setting up the horizon. Now let's draw some lines. I could now say, because I'm using the middle, I know something. I just learned something, and then this there will be lines that emerge from the middle if I utilize the middle, and then there will be other lines that are perpendicular to those lines because they have a 90-degree angle, and therefore they are parallel to the horizon, right? So I can either start by drawing one of those lines, or I can start by drawing one of the other lines. This was not intended. I can start by drawing these lines, and what you can see now already is that what it forms is kind of a grid. And this grid now, it lets you choose where you want your platform. So why is this hard? Because the platform could be under the ground, the platform could be floating in the sky. And how do you know this? The only way you know this is you make the decision to anchor it in the ground, right? So watch this. First, we need to decide where it ends. Let's say it ends here. Do away with the other stuff. Don't make this too confusing for yourself, right? Other lines, and now what happens is we know that this platform, it goes down into the ground. It goes down into the ground. Where does it end? We don't know, but we have to decide it. See how you see here how the grass is silhouetted. So the slope of the hill You can feel it from the other drawing. So now you need to have a decision. The decision is it stops here. How do we know that? We just decide it. And then we draw some grass. This is the border from the grass. And it goes the same way that the other grass goes, so it makes sense. And then maybe there comes a little bit of a natural stone and another one. And then there's more grass. And then there's a little bush. And then it continues until here. And then even beyond this point, it continues. So see now how we grounded this platform, this structure into the ground. This is an arbitrary decision. You can paint the platform anywhere. You could have made this line. You could have made the platform going until here and then hit the ground over here. That is all you're free to decide, but this is hard to wrap your head around. So therefore we don't do fancy stuff with the shape first. We stick to the rectangular shapes so that we can easily understand them. Now we need to decide where the platform ends. Let's say I'll make it end here because I still want to see the trees over there. So then what I do is I erase everything that I don't need from this and then just have my platform. Now what I can do is I just want to keep this a little bit. Now I can erase from the base sketch what is covered up by the platform. So now it feels solid, right? And now I could even erase those guiding lines, right? We know how we constructed them. So yeah. Now we have our platform, and then we can do whatever we want. For example, I can add another substructure to this. I can say I need a smaller platform that is coming out from this platform. And this platform ends here and is not as steep. And it does this. And then that ends over here. Do the same thing. Again. Erase. You got your second platform. And that second platform maybe is connected where you cannot even see it to the first platform. Right? Now for that you need some imagination, some practice. But there's sites that you do not see, but in time you will learn to think about them and to understand what is covered up by what. Now you can add infinitely more platforms. You can make a walkway. Just demonstrating this some more. And this is still simple because it's only 90-degree angles. Do this on the other one. So can you see what we're doing here? We add shapes with the same rule set. This is 90 degrees. 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 You see where I'm getting at? You understand, fully understand these shapes. Now if you're satisfied with these, you can you can add shapes. You can say I want a stairway here, and now that is kind of bent over, and you don't know this angle. You don't know it right now, but it doesn't matter because it's possible, and you just use it to combine to connect shapes that you do understand, right? The same way if you would say, you know what, I will arbitrarily create an angle here and cut away from this side. You can absolutely do that. Now, this is no longer true because, of course, this will influence how this hits the ground slightly. You see that? Now, you have to differentiate what you do know and what you do understand and what you don't understand. And you have to know what you don't understand. Right now, we know that we do not understand this angle. And we do not understand this angle because we created it arbitrarily, right? We just drew a line and then cut the shape. But what we do know is that we still know that this angle is 90 degrees, and we still know that these angles are 90 degrees, and so on and so forth. The only thing we don't know is that now these two angles, we have no clue, right? So, little thought experiment for you. Create arbitrary shapes from bigger shapes that you understand, right? This already lets you create a lot of stuff that you then know that is not wrong, right? So, and you see, we didn't use any grid. You don't need to use any grid for that. The same way you can introduce the 45-degree shapes again, and just keep building this structure. Now, one last hack I have for you guys before we end this part is, let's say, and this is a very obvious one, but at the same time a lot of people don't understand this. Let's say you want the guy, and the guy is walking here. Now, standing here. Then you want the second guy. And the second guy is on the same platform, therefore we understand the flat ground, we understand the surface, we understand how shapes vanish into the distance, right? So now, if I want to have the second guy, the question is always how big is the second guy if you're standing somewhere else? So, and then you can basically construct this super easy. You take the height of guy 1 and then you just project it wherever you want. This is the same height as this height back there on the same platform. You can move this across as long as you're on the same parallel level to the horizon. The size does not change. So now you draw your guy and you are sure that these two guys are the same height. Now it is all a matter of that vanishing of the shape, right? Because now watch this. If I move this guy in front here, now it is this guy's child because he's so small compared. Back there, though, the same shape is the same size projected than the guy in front. If you move him back further, you might not be able to perceive this right now, but what this means is now he got bigger. The same way I move him in front, he gets smaller. I move the same shape back, it gets bigger naturally, right? I move him here, Now he's a giant on the mountain, bigger than the trees. You get that? I think that concept is easy to understand. So that for you is the logic of rectangular shapes in space, how to construct them, how to understand them. I recommend you practice this, and then once you wrap your head around this, you will have some questions and I will answer them in part 2. Guys, we're done for today. Thanks for watching this. Hope this helped you. If it did, leave me some comments. If it didn't, leave me some comments how it didn't. You have some questions, also put them down below. So just a quick recap. This is only part 1. So in case you're wondering now, oh, you did not talk about this, that and the other, about the depth, about the field of view, all this stuff comes in part 2, right? So what did we learn today? We learned what is a horizon, what is flat ground, how do objects with 90-degree angles, rectangular shapes behave in the world towards the horizon, how can you manipulate them, how can you set them up, how can you cut away from them, add to them, even turn them in arbitrary angles, and also what is a 45-degree angle in a full canvas where you have a middle that specifies parallel lines that are orthogonal to the middle of the canvas. So all of this stuff is connected. As I said before, if you're just drawing a box without a horizon into your environment, you're doing it wrong, because you cannot know if it's correct or not. You need to have an understanding of what comes first and then what co-depends on those decisions. So of course, I see it all the time. My students, they eyeball it. They just draw a box and say, oh, this is a box and it vanishes, and they don't even but if you draw some lines then, like I did in Photoshop, you will find out it's wrong. It's just, you cannot estimate this stuff correctly. And also, on the other hand, this is not about being perfect. You never saw me zoom in or like go and find exactly the spot. This is not about being 100% mathematically accurate. This is about to understand it, have the right hierarchy in your head, and then get it 95% right, and that is good enough, because we're doing art here. But if you will just eyeball it, if you will not draw a horizon, you will have it 50% wrong most of the time. You will just have it wrong, because there's no way that you can estimate this stuff correctly, even in the ballpark of being correct, right? So just be aware of that. Practice this. Let me see how it goes. See you later.